I want to welcome everybody. We have a very special presentation this evening. We're going to be doing a Q&A with Eddie Watt. I'm here with Dan. I'm here with Drew.
We're live. I don't think we're live.
We're live.
Oh, we're live? Okay.
All right. Well, hey, as John said, we got a special guest tonight. He's a two-time World Series champion. He's in the Northern Iowa Hall of Fame. He's in the Baltimore Orioles Hall of Fame. He has a career 2.91 ERA. He once threw a rosin bag for a strike in a game, and he's been warming up in our bullpen. So bring him in, John.
All right. Hi, Eddie.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
It's good to be here. It's always fun to do these.
All right. Well, I know Dan's been chomping at the bit to ask you a question. Dan, you want to lead us off?
Yeah. So, everybody always wants to talk about the 69 World Series, and rightfully so. But I want to talk a little bit about that American League Championship Series against the Twins. Because that was a really good Minnesota Twins team that you guys beat. And it was a 3-game sweep, but those first 2 games were extra inning games, close games. In fact, the second one went, 12? Well, the first one went 12 innings, I think. What do you remember about that particular series against the Twins in 69?
Well, like you said, the Twins were a very, very good club. They had Cott, Perry, a couple other guys that pitched real well. Then they had, of course, Oliva and Carew and Killebrew and that whole bunch. And I remember the games being the one game I think went about 12 innings, and Paul Blair laid down a 2-strike bunt.
Yep.
And when Peranowski was pitching, and let's see, I don't remember how the first game turned out. I think Dick Hall ended up pitching for us, but we played Minnesota though 3 straight times, and we swept them 3 straight times. And that was the first playoffs before you got into the World Series, and I wasn't sure how I liked it, and I'm still not sure how I like all the playoff games, but it was a good time. Of course, we had a very, very good ball club too. I was very fortunate to be blessed to be on a good club most of my life, and they're exciting games.
I looked up the numbers, and you pitched in the first game. You pitched 2 scoreless perfect innings. So you pitched in the first ever American League Championship Series game. So congratulations on that. And I also looked up the second game. Dave McNally pitched an 11-inning shutout, which nobody ever talks about. Maybe one of the best pitched games in playoff history, and you never hear about it.
No, I actually, honestly, I don't remember that much about him. I do remember pitching in the first game. Excuse me. I got 2 innings in, and then McNally, he always seemed like he could come up like he did later on against Cincinnati, and against Cincinnati when he won Game 5, and pitch a really, really good ball game in the playoffs like that.
One more question about that. I noticed Killebrew, you held him in check, except that he walked a bunch of times. Do you remember if there was a conscious decision to pitch around Killebrew?
The what?
Killebrew didn't do much in that series. It was mostly
Right.
Oliva, and it looked like Killebrew got almost no hits, but he walked a bunch of times. He got like 8 walks or something. Was there a conscious decision to pitch around Killebrew?
Well, if the situation come up, at least in my case, and I'm sure the rest of the pitchers feel the same way, if there's somebody that has a chance to beat you, and you can walk them and you can pitch to somebody else, that's always a pretty good idea. I know we didn't want to let him beat us. Carew is going to get his base hits. You don't care who's pitching or what's going on. But Killebrew, when he's going to get base hits, he's going to hit them out of the ballpark and beat you, and that's what we couldn't have. So I think we were especially careful with him, and sometimes walked him, intentionally, unintentionally.
Right, right. I appreciate that. Drew, you want to take it?
Yeah. So I got I've had an opportunity to talk to your daughters, Tammy and Tina, and they kind of implied that maybe you had a little bit of an honor streak when you were a younger man. Is there any stories about goldfish that you can tell me about?
Oh, well, that really wasn't my idea, but I was in on it.
Sure. Okay.
Seattle, if you read Boughton's book, there was a piece in it. But what I remember, the Seattle, I can't remember what they were when they were in there in 60.
Pilots.
They were the pilots. They had Eddie O'Brien, and I don't know if they had both twins, but they had one of the twins as their bullpen coach. Well, we had a guy named Gene Brabender, and Bender. Well, he was my roommate the year before. So when we get out there, it was Grabowski, Davey Leonard, and myself. Somehow we came up with some goldfish. And at that time, out in the bullpen, they had these kind of office bottles they turn upside down, and that's what they got their drinking water. Well, we took a bunch of the goldfish, took the bottles out, put the goldfish in, put the bottles back in. So when I think it was Johnny O'Brien came out and looked around and looked over at the drinking fountain, they had like 4 or 5 goldfish swimming around through it. And he had a colossal hissy fit. He stormed in, went to the umpires. He was going to forfeit the game, and they were going to declare a national emergency and everything else. But it didn't amount to much. But the O'Brien didn't like it, and we just pretended we didn't know anything about it. We told them maybe the ground crew did it, or some fans came down or something. But it was pretty good. We had a few instances like that. The next day, Bender, Gene Brabender, come over to our bullpen coach. Now you got to realize that he was probably the strongest human being ever to walk, and he'd pick up these big bullpen benches, put them all up on top of our bullpen. So we had a heck of a time. We had to get the ground crew and about 4 or 5 other guys to get them down off our roof of the bullpen so we could have a place to sit. So,
well, he had been your teammate, right? Brabender was an Oriole before that.
Yeah, he was my roommate even.
And then he got traded to Seattle.
Well, it was in the expansion draft, I think, is what it was.
Yeah.
And he just laughed. He thought it was funny, like everybody else, except a couple of their guys.
What do you got, John?
I'm curious if you remember when you were first signed to a baseball card contract.
A baseball card contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you-
I signed in 1961. And the day after, about 2 days after you signed, you'd get a letter. Topps would send you a letter saying, okay, here's $5. Take it, sign it, cash it, spend it. And with this, you agree that Topps is the only company that can use your like and image and all that kind of stuff. And that's how everybody that signed the contract, I'm sure, got that kind of a deal. And it's just a standard letter. And then, of course, when Marvin Miller took over, they increased the awards for being in the big leagues, because you didn't get anything if you weren't in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And then there was a manual that they handed out that had prizes. This is for a 1 year in the big leagues and then the 2 years in the big leagues and stuff. But it was just, and I thought that was the greatest thing that ever happened. I never got paid to have my picture taken before, but
Yeah, I was curious how it felt to be on a card.
yeah, it's a big deal. It really, really is. I live in a little town of 1,000 people in Nebraska, and I've been in the golf league there for 20 some years now. I retired in 1963. 2003, I retired when I was 63. And one of the guys, a very, very good golfer, he and I had some great matches when he was on one side and I was playing against him. He come up to me one day and he said, wow, wow, wow. And I said, oh, well, what's the matter, Scott? He said, I was going through eBay the other day and I saw your picture. And I said, no kidding. He says, yeah, I saw your picture on one of them bubblegum cards. And it was for sale. It was all in a nice thing you could put on the mantle. It was framed in wood and all that stuff. He said, for $98. I said, well, hey, Scott, I'm not worth $98. But he looked at it and he was amazed. Now, I'd played golf with this guy 20 years, and he didn't know I played baseball even.
Oh, wow.
Word is kind of slow in Nebraska, and baseball is not really the number one sport. So the next Thursday when I came out, I had that very same card. It was a card with Ed Barnowski and I on it. And I just gave it to him, and he thought that I was God, and he thought I was the king of the world. So.
Hey, so in 1969, you were in a bit of a zone. You had a 1.65 ERA. What do you attribute your success to that season?
I think I was healthy. I think I was healthy all year. By 1969, I think I had finally had enough confidence now. And I realized that I had the ability to play in the big leagues. I didn't before. I was never. I always had a lot of confidence in myself. I never lacked that, but I don't know how I ranked up against everybody else in the league, and I didn't know if I could get out to hitters and a few other things. But I had a pretty good year in '66 when I didn't have to start. Then I was only a mediocre pitcher. But I had a pretty good year in '67 and a pretty good year in '68. And then the ball club came back in '69, and everybody played real well. And, of course, we had outstanding defense. Belanger and Brooks and Davy Johnson. And Boog was a tremendous first baseman catching the ball. And, of course, Blair. And Frank was a little better in the outfield than people gave him credit. And my job was to pitch, every once in a while when we were ahead, the last inning or two, and just keep the ball in the ballpark. And if I could do that, we would have an excellent chance to win because I'd make the pitch and they'd catch the ball for me. They were an outstanding club for me to play with, and I wasn't a great strikeout leader. I wasn't outstanding individualistic pitcher. I struck out a few people, not many, but I tried not to walk any, and I tried to keep the ball in the ballpark, and consequently, we made out well. And when I'd get in a ball game, somebody hit a home run, get a base hit, drive in a run, and I got the win. I mean, I didn't get to win. The club won, and I just happened to be there when they won. Weaver.
Did you have a go-to pitch or a favorite pitch?
I was very simple. I always tell people that I didn't trick a guy in 10 years in the big leagues. Everybody knew what I had. Everybody knew what I threw. I was a 75% fastball pitcher. And out of that 75%, almost 90% were sinkers. I did have a legitimate fastball. I did learn how to cut a ball. I could do a few things, and I had a decent slider. But if I had to get somebody out, I would just go to the fastball, go to the sinker, and everybody knew it. And if I made really, really good pitches, I could keep people from hitting the ball too hard, take a little sting out of the bat, and it worked out well for me. That's the biggest part of my pitching philosophy.
Anybody watching, if you want to post some questions.
There was a good question here from Mike, the sports history collector. How was it to play for Hank Bauer versus Earl Weaver?
Well, first of all, Hank Bauer was a nice guy. He was portrayed all the time as a big, gruff Marine and Army veteran and all that. But Hank was a man, and he always wanted to be treated as a man, and he treated his players as men. Never asked them to do anything that he couldn't do. Once in a while, he'd become a little bit short-tempered, not very often. And I grew up with Weaver. I mean, he was Weave was in Double-A ball when I started with Baltimore in the minor leagues, and I played a couple of years for Cal Ripken Sr., and then I played the last half of 1 year and the first half of the next year for Weave. And then when he came up to the big leagues in '68, he became the coach, and it was everybody knew that he was going to take over, even though we were, I think, either leading the American League at the time or a half a game back or something. And Weave was an outstanding baseball man. He could sit. He sat down. I'm sure he locked himself in a closet 3 or 4 weeks before spring training started with the schedule, and he'd say, "Okay, the first month we're going to play 500, or maybe 2 or 3 games over 500. And then the second month we're going to go on this. We're going to hit the West Coast, which we never played real well out there. But then we're going to come back and we're going through Kansas City and Minnesota, which we usually played well, and the White Sox, which we played well, and Cleveland, which everybody played well against at that time." And, say, okay, we're going to be 15 games over 500 in June. And he'd have it all figured out. And he'd just say, okay, we're going to do this and this and this as a season-long thing. And he'd sit there in the ball game each night and know what was going to go on 3 or 4 innings in advance. And in about the 6th, 7th inning, he'd walk up and down the dugout, and he'd look at Kurt Moten, and he'd say, "Okay, Moten, you're going to hit off of Sparky Lyle here in the 8th inning, and you're going to have to hit his slider." And then he'd go to Davey May, and he said, "Okay, Davey, you're going to have to hit off of this. You're going to hit off of this guy in the 9th unless we're way." Just he had the game mapped out in his mind, in the bullpen, we knew after a while, we knew exactly what Weave was thinking, and the phone would ring, and we wouldn't even have to answer it. We knew what the situation was and who was going to come in the ball game. So there was no surprises. I played on a couple of teams that you were never quite sure of what your job was. They had their hero of the day, and if you pitched good yesterday, you're in the ball game today. And if you great story. I went to Philadelphia in the month of June. I pitched, I think, 18 times in June and gave up no runs the first 17 times. I come up the 18th, and I'm leading the club in appearances and saves and ERA and all that kind of stuff that people like to read about. And I come in and faced Hank Aaron. Bases loaded. I threw him one pitch. I didn't get it in quite far enough, and Hank told me later on when I was with the Atlanta Braves minor league system. He was the minor league director, that all he was looking for was to hit a home run. Well, he got his wish. I didn't get it in enough, and he hit a grand slam. It was 6 inches over the fence and 6 inches fair. That's first runs I'd given up for 2 months.
Wow.
Was that 74? That's 74, right? So he'd already broken the home run record at that point.
Interesting thing is that home run, that was home run number 733, that broke Babe Ruth's record in playoffs, World Series, All-Star games, everything. That was Babe Ruth, I guess, had 732 in all of those games, everything. And Hank hit 733 off of me. And,
now we know the answer to that trivia question.
What?
We can't ask that trivia now.
Yeah, no. I told that to my daughter today, and I just
we
thought
didn't have
about
it ready.
But
we have a good question here. Who is your favorite catcher to pitch to?
My favorite catcher, both Elrod and Andy Etchebarren. They were both so easy. Andy was a kind of more of a student of the game. He would know everything that was going on, and he would work hard to make pitching easy for the guys. Elrod was just he's from down in the Virgin Islands, and he's just the happiest man that ever walked. He was absolutely no problem. When you wanted to throw a pitch, you threw it. You could shake him off. He'd never bat an eye. And after Elrod and I worked together for a year, I don't think I shook him off, but maybe once or twice a year. And I spent, probably 7 or 8 years. I spent 3 years with Etchebarren in the minor leagues, and then all 8 years with Baltimore in the big leagues. The last 7, 8 years, I don't think I shook him off, maybe twice a year. But they were both very, very easy. Now, they weren't Johnny Bench and Yogi Berra or Roy Campanella or Bill Dickey or anybody, but they were the pitcher's friend. They were the easiest people to throw to and work with, and the most compatible I think I've ever, that you could want.
Who was the toughest batter you ever faced?
Oh, that's like saying who's the prettiest girl in the world. Well, I'll throw out 10 or 12 names. I always had a left-hander with me in the bullpen, and I'd go into Boston, and we've just said, sixth inning on, you got everybody except Carl Yastrzemski. Everybody else was right-handed. Pete Rickard would, he'd get Yastrzemski. He was a good hitter, but I never faced him often. Rod Carew can get a base hit anytime he want to. He could bunt the ball. He could slap it to the left side, the right side. He'd slap it up the middle. Rod had tremendously large and strong hands. Never hit many home runs. I think he could if he really, really wanted to. But he would hit, and he could hit very, very well, and was probably one of the best fundamental hitters I ever faced. Tony Oliva knew absolutely nothing about hitting. He'd just get a bat, walk up to home plate, and the pitcher would wind up and throw it, and he'd hit it. He didn't have any particular style. He'd move around in a box from here to there to up to back, just wherever he wanted to stand. But you couldn't. They told me the first day I went up there to face him, throw it right down the middle of the plate as hard as you can throw it, and hope he makes himself out. And I said, "Oh no, I've got a sinker that nobody's going to pull, nobody's going to hit." I faced McNally. McNally was a horrible pitcher if you gave him 5 or 6 runs the first inning. If you don't give him anything, he's going to throw a shutout. But you give him 5. Well, he gave Minnesota 5 runs the first inning. I came in the ball game. This is 66. I was a long man. And Oliva come up, and I threw him the best, hardest sinker down and away you could throw anybody. And he just reached out, cranked, flipped it over, and drove it right past Boog Powell at first base and almost killed him. So he came up again, and I said, "Okay, well, he can't pull me like that. I will fix him." I cranked up, and I threw him the best fastball I could throw in off of the plate, and he hit a bullet down the third base. He's a left-handed hitter, of course. He hit a bullet down the third base line like to kill Brooks. And for the next 7 years, I just threw him right down the middle of the plate and have him hit it at somebody. Pete Rose was a great hitter, of course, but the one hitter that I didn't face in a game, I didn't face actually, but I turned out to be probably as good a hitter as I ever faced is I keep thinking of his name, the kid from San Diego, the kid Gwynn.
Tony
Gwynn. He played for me in Double-A when I was managing in the Padre organization. And he came down from the rookie league just after he'd signed. And they sent him from there to Double-A to finish the season the last month. Well, he hit about 440 the last month, going from rookie league to Double-A. And the first time I threw batting practice to him, I threw him a pitch. It was a strike. He banged. He hit a line drive off the left field wall, and I threw him another pitch. Bang! He hit one to center field, and then he hit one to right field. And I said, "It's not that easy." So I threw one up about hat bill high, and he hit the ball up the gap in the left center. And then I threw him one about ankle high, and he hit another line drive to right center. And after he got through taking batting practice, I went by and I said, "Tony, you don't have to swing at everything I throw just to make me feel good." He said, "No, that's all right." He said it was close enough to hit, and he was about as good a hitter as you'd ever want to find.
I have
Dan?
a question here.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Drew.
Somebody wants to know which was your favorite ballpark to play in. Did you have a favorite?
I guess my favorite ballpark was, the easy way to say is just where I was playing at the time. But I enjoyed playing in Memorial Stadium in Baltimore because it was my home ballpark. After the ball game, I only lived 3 or 4 blocks from the stadium, and I could just walk home after the game. I walked down before the game, and I just liked the atmosphere there, I guess.
Okay. All right, Drew, you can take it from here.
Well, I got a trivia question, but Dan, do you want to ask another question before I get my trivia question ready?
Yeah, I was, we were talking about Weaver, and I think like one of the things that he did with you guys in the bullpen is maybe why you got so good in '69 after being pretty good in '68. And that's like Leonard and DeCall and Rickard and you all seem to know exactly what you all had good years, exactly what your jobs were. And is that part of the reason why '69 was such a positive year with Weaver's first full season?
Well, I don't know if that. I will agree that is probably a reason.
Okay.
Earl instilled the faith in you that, this is your job, do it. You don't have to worry. He called Pete and I in spring training, first day of spring training. He said, okay, you guys are going to be responsible for the last 3 innings of every game all year long. And Turkey and David Leonard, they took the first 6 or 7, and we had another Marcelino Lopez, or we had somebody else out there, bona fide longman. But he said, you guys just be ready every day. We're not going to. And he looked at Pete and I, and he says, you don't have a curfew. You guys are grown men. You don't need a curfew. Do what you need to do to be ready, but be ready every day. And he expected us to be ready every day. And in '69, I kept track of how many times I actually were called to warm up. It was a ridiculous number of times. out of the 162 games, I think he called my name down to warm up in about 130 of them.
Yeah.
And I never, I didn't, get 100% ready in a lot of them. A lot of it was to inspire the starting pitcher to continue to get people out. But he just said, okay, you guys do this. You're on your own. Even in spring training, he'd say, okay, you guys aren't going to pitch in spring training unless the situation comes up. And Pete and I would not pitch for 3 or 4 days or a couple days, and we just go in and tell him, hey, that's when the Orioles minor league camp was at Biscayne Bay down there, the Biscayne College, I guess it was, and Pete and I'd walk by and say, hey, we're going up and pitch in the minor league today. We'll be back by game time. And in uniform, we'd go out and get in the car and drive up there, and then I'd go look up Cal Ripken because I played 2.5 years for him and kept a very, very good friendship with Cal. And he'd say, okay, fine. You go pitch over on field 3, and Pete, you go pitch on field 4. And when you're done, you'll be done. We just went back. We'd usually stop and get a beer on the way, and then go back to the stadium. And then we'd change your uniform, go sit in the stands, and I would go sit on the bullpen, and then we might even get in the game that night. But never know.
So, as a former major league pitcher, what do you think about the modern pitch count?
I was just going to go there, John.
I think Drew and I have talked about it a couple of times. I don't, and they're trying to prove me wrong, and they're doing it to a certain extent. I don't believe in a pitch count. I believe in not the number of pitches that a guy throws. It's a situation that he has to throw them in and that kind of stuff. But I started in the minor leagues. I started exactly 100 games the 4 years I spent in the minor leagues. And I averaged almost 8 innings a start for those 100. I pitched 700 and some odd games or innings. And I don't think I ever got out of a ball game in less than 150, 160 pitches. But I had done a lot of things from the time I was 8, 9 years old. I remember taking a golf ball and going down in high school, in junior high, and throwing a golf ball up against the side of the gym building. It had nice, smooth area, and I would play games up there with myself and throw 100 or 200 pitches. So my arm got strong just from use, and consequently, I don't think I ever really got too tired to pitch, and I don't think my stuff ever went downhill after 88 pitches. Like some do.
Wow.
If you train your arm and your body to go 5 innings on 90 pitches or 100 pitches, and then you're done, it will be. But I guess they think the pitching part is that much more important than having extra players. So.
It's funny. I heard Ty Cobb on an old interview in, I think it was 1961, and he said essentially the same thing, that he would keep his legs strong all the time, and in the off season he'd go hunting and hike, and he would run with weighted shoes, and he believed in using his legs to keep them fresh. So that's interesting. Okay, Drew.
Well, and for those that don't know, Mr. Watt, you were a pitching coach for how many years?
25. Well, 21. I managed 4 years first, and then I was 21 years a pitching coach.
Okay. Well, I've got a trivia question, and I got a little prize we're going to give away tonight. I got an Eddie Watt.
Ah,
What do you think of that?
that's pretty good.
PSA slab. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't show PSA slab cards on Mr. Mangini's channel, but anyway.
So good looking back then.
What's that?
He was good looking back then. Hey, yeah.
Look at that guy.
Yeah.
All right, here's
Great
the trivia question. Whoever can get this right will get that card. All right. So, John, if you'll watch the chat down below.
All right.
Who were the 4 big league managers that Eddie Watt played for? So again, who were the 4 big league managers Eddie Watt played for? Boy, sure went quiet, didn't it?
Uh-oh, they're thinking. I thought Stooks would already have that typed in.
Well,
Yeah.
we gave 2 of them. The 2 hard ones we didn't give away.
Dan, now you're what are you doing down there? You're cheating over here. Somebody paying you on the side?
Dan's texting somebody the answer.
No, I'm looking at the chat.
I don't see anything
almost
coming
gave
up.
away the Philly one because I was going to say that manager was no Earl Weaver.
Okay.
Yep.
Wait a minute, we got an answer here. What's Stu
Stu
got?
Bauer, Weaver, Ozark, Marshall.
He's got it right. So Hank
Right.
Bauer was your first manager, right, with the Orioles, followed by
Right.
Earl Weaver.
Right.
And then we had Danny Ozark with the Phillies, right?
Right.
And Danny Ozark, if I remember right, he served in World War II at the Battle of the Bulge.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. And also Jim Marshall there in Chicago. Does that sound right? Did we get that research correct?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Stu,
I have to share this because it's funny.
I played for Roy Hartsfield also in AAA,
Triple
I
A.
knew Stuke was going to get it.
and I played for Cal Ripken, who did manage the Orioles after I left.
Right.
I had the four managers.
All right. Well, Stu, I know I got your phone number, so I'll get that to you.
Oh, I did have one other question,
Oh,
Drew,
what do we got?
before you start using your ones. I looked up the roster of the Hawaii squad, and I think it was 76. And Joe Pepitone played like 30 games. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What, any Joe Pepitone stories? Did he have the hair dryer?
Well, in a mixed crowd, I don't have too many. Joe, of course, I played all those years against him with the Yankees, and then I went to spring training, and Joe was there going to play first, and I made the club to pitch, and Joe had just had, I don't know if that's before or after he'd had all his drug problems. I think it was both. I think it was before and after, and he had a very uneventful, what do you say, 30-some games in Hawaii? Yeah, he was there, and I don't think he had much of an influence on anything. I think they got him basically to get some people to come into the ballpark. Joe was a nice guy. He was a nice guy. Matter of fact, he just lived down the hall from me when we were there. We rented apartments overlooking Pearl Harbor, and Joe just lived down the hall from me. But he was a nice guy, but I think he didn't have the same attitude or something that he did when he played before. Maybe getting out of New York took it away from him. I don't know.
I have a question for you. Can I ask?
Okay.
In the 1969 World Series, did that ball hit Cleon Jones on his foot?
With the
Oh, I don't know. I'm in the.
You don't know?
Oh, he's
I'm
all
in.
in bullpen. Yeah.
I'm in the dugout then. See, I'm in the clubhouse.
Yeah, I wondered what the players thought.
I don't think it did. Nobody thought it did. The catchers, and I can't remember who was catching. I think I can't even remember who was pitching. I know there were a couple things that happened that I'd pitched earlier in the ball game. Oh, I had the one play that Shag Crawford miscalled or saw differently than most everybody else on J.C. Martin's bunt when the hit Pete hit him in the back and he was way inside the line where he couldn't be. But I don't know. I don't know if
Okay. I was just curious if you had an opinion.
I really don't know.
I saw a question earlier by Eddie's Cardboard Chaos. He was wondering, well, you and I have talked a lot about Brooks Robinson, and I know you had great admiration for him. Can you tell us a story about Brooks Robinson that maybe others don't know about?
Yeah, okay. One of my favorite Brooks Robinson stories, after we're done playing, I'm in Phoenix in the winter and in an instruction league with, let's see, who am I there with? Houston, I think. But I'm in the instructional league, and we looked in the paper. My wife and I looked in the paper, and Brooks Robinson coming to the Holiday Inn, whatever it is, to sign autographs on a Sunday afternoon. Well, instructional league, we played 6 days a week, and we were off on Sunday. And I said, well, let's go down and see Brooks. We hadn't seen him a couple of years. This was, somewhere about 1990, maybe 92. Betty said, okay. So Sunday afternoon came, we get in the car and drive down to this place where it was going on. And we get there, and a big sign on the door, entrance fees $1. And of course, now I would never call my wife cheap. I would call her frugal, maybe.
Let's not get in trouble here.
Yeah, insanely frugal, possibly. But she says, well, I'm not going to pay $1. She's like, and I said, well, you got to pay stuff. You got to. She said, no, I'm not going to pay $1. So I pulled out $1. I gave it to the guy at the gate, went inside, walked down, and there was a line of about 100 people lined up to get his autograph. And then he saw me coming down the aisle, and he yelled, Ed, hi, how you doing? Good. Oh, come on up and sit down. And then he says, well, where's Betty? And I said, Brooksy, she wouldn't pay $1 to see you. And Brooks just cracked up. He said, she wouldn't. And I said, no, she wasn't going to pay $1. Well, we'll fix her. So he says, he told that line of 100 people, he said, just hold it. Just wait. He gets down off the platform, walks down out the door, takes her by the hand, leads her back inside, up on the stage where Brooks is. And then Brooks says, get a chair, and brings it out. And so she's sitting on a chair beside him as he's signing autographs, and they're just talking, having a good time. And that was one of my favorite Brooks Robinson stories. He is that kind of a guy. He was the most genuine, honest, nice guy. I have been extremely fortunate in my life. I have a couple stories about other people that were just as nice to my family that are unbelievable. But that's a story about Brooks. We were playing in Boston. No, we were playing in Yankee Stadium. I come in the ball game, and winning run gets around to third base, 2 out, and I throw a pitch, bang, hits perfect little ground ball right to Brooks. And you think, well, that's the surest out in baseball. And he went down, and the ball went right between his legs, rolled out into left field. And he just walked off the mound, come by me, and he says, hey, he said, well, I said, that's all right, Squatty. We'll get him tomorrow. There's no problem. And never batted an eye. It did not faze him that we got beat, because he knew we were going to win, and he didn't moan and complain and apologize or anything else. He just said, oh, that's all right. We'll just get him tomorrow. We'll be all right. So.
Who do you think was? I'm real curious. When you're playing, who do you think threw the hardest?
Who threw the hardest? I didn't face him, but I only got really close to him a couple of times. Once in spring training, and then once in the series. Sandy Koufax.
Yeah.
Sandy Koufax threw easily, but you could hear the ball spin, and you could almost hear it from the dugout as it left his hand and went toward home plate. He could really throw. Now, other guys threw hard. Of course, guns weren't as prevalent at that time, and everybody had their own version of the gun. Some people had what they called a fast gun, and some had a slow gun. And I don't know, but if I would have had to say, I would have said Koufax was the hardest thrower, except for Steve Dalkowski.
Somebody asked about that in the chat.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him pitch?
Steve Dalkowski. Dalco was a very, very unusual specimen. He was 5'10", 175 pounds. He was from Connecticut, someplace up in there. Baltimore signed him, and he could not control himself or the ball. He was an alcoholic by a fairly young age, and he could really, really throw. He threw the ball through an umpire's mask one time, shattered it. He threw a ball through a backstop, through the wooden backstop one time. He was pitching I went to spring training in 1962. 63 to throw batting practice. I'd just come out of A ball, and Dalco was down there. If he could get it across the plate, he was going to make the club. I remember he pitched.
So those aren't just rumors.
What?
I said, so those just aren't rumors. You saw him pitch.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, he can throw. Bertie Tebbetts was managing Cincinnati at that time, and Bertie Tebbetts said if anybody got close enough to the plate to get hit, they'd release him or something. Dalco was like I said, an unusual guy. We both got sent down with us later on, but Dalco was throwing against the Yankees. And the first hitter, I can't remember who it was. Might have been, I don't know. It was 63. He could have been any one of the famous guys, and just blew him away. No problem. The second hitter come up, and the first pitch he cast was 2/3 of the way up the backstop. He almost threw it clear out of the stadium. And everybody said, well, that's not a big deal. We've seen him do that. The next pitch, the very same thing. He wound up and threw the ball and got halfway to home plate and rolled and made it to home plate. He'd blown something in his arm, rotator cuff or something, but something blew completely. And then Baltimore kept him and rehabbed him 2 full years, and now he can throw a little bit. And so we're down in the AAA camp. We had Baltimore had the big league camp in Miami, AAA in West Palm Beach, or no, Daytona Beach, and the minor league camp up in Thomasville, Georgia. Well, we'd been in AAA together, and they sent us both down to the minor league camp. I was going to either Aberdeen, South Dakota, or Elmira that year. And they said, okay, here you are, report to Thomasville. And I had my car. So I got in the car, and I drove up, got there, and got in Thomasville, there were 60 guys to a room, and you got a little army cot that was complete with scratchy green blankets. Well, I was laying there, and about a week after we left Daytona Beach, here comes Delkowski. He looked like a tomcat that had gotten drugged through a keyhole. All he had was a toothbrush. Same clothes. Nothing else but a toothbrush. And he walked in, and the empty buck was right beside mine. And I've always been wanting to get up really early in the morning. And I started to get up, and Dalco goes, "Ah." And then I heard, and he was having a beer for breakfast. And I think that was the year he got released, and then went to Pittsburgh. Stayed a little bit and didn't play much in Double A, I think, or whatever it was. And well, then he went on and had a very checkered life. Ended up out Santa Barbara or San Bernardino or someplace as a bartender. So he'd cut down just to a fifth a night or something. So he'd be able to go to work the next day. But
I had no idea he went to Pittsburgh.
Well, he never went to the big leagues. Got Double A. Yeah. But he threw harder than anybody. There's a story about him going down to a rifle range and trying to throw a baseball into a square box that would time bullets and stuff, but he never hit the box. So they didn't, and nobody knew how hard he really threw.
Yeah. That's great. That's good stuff. For the viewers, if you don't know, his rookie cards in 1963 Topps.
63,
yeah. Such a great card.
That's where I met him the first time. We went to spring training together. He went down to make a club. I went down to throw batting practice. I'd just come out of A ball.
So somebody asked about chewing tobacco, because I was looking at some of your cards, and the earlier ones in the 60s, you have a chaw, but then by the 70s, you don't. Did you quit?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I started chewing tobacco. I played town team ball, and some of the old farmers that I played with chewed tobacco, and they chewed a plug, or they chewed a lot of them chewed that WB cut. What was that, Conwood?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, anyhow, they chewed, and so I chewed a little bit, and I kind of liked it. Of course, I couldn't in college, but then when I started, I signed in 61, and I started chewing tobacco in 62, and I chewed all the time until about 2000.
Oh, okay.
Maybe about 1990, whenever it was, I can't remember, Bowie Kuhn or somebody was the commissioner of baseball, and somebody had the minor leagues, and in the minor leagues, you couldn't carry around that pack of Copenhagen in your back pocket anymore, and you couldn't chew tobacco. And of course, you couldn't smoke in uniform or chew in uniform or do anything. And by this time, I was a full-fledged alcoholic, and I'd stopped drinking in 1988. So I haven't had a drink since '88, and they come around, the president of the league in Florida State League, where I was with Atlanta. Yeah, I was with Atlanta at this time. And he come around and he says, "Eddie, you gotta stop. It's rules, commissioner of baseball, etc. Everybody says You got to stop. And the old president, I said, hey, I stopped drinking. That was my choice. And I said, I stopped smoking. I didn't smoke very much. I said, that was my choice. And I said, I enjoy chewing. I chew when I play golf or when I fish. I said, if I decide to stop chewing, I will. If I don't, I won't. And I didn't for almost a year. And then they come out and said, well, okay, we'll fine you $100 every time we see you with a pack of Red Band. And I said, you can try, but I won't pay it. And then they said, well, we'll find your manager. And that was Big Jim Saul was who I was with most of the time with the Braves. He was managed, and I was pitching coach. And they were going to fine him $1 or $100 if I had chewed. So I said, okay, I won't. I'd stop. And it's like a lot of things I did. I wish I hadn't chewed tobacco all those years. I might have had a full mouth full of teeth and a few other things, but I did, and maybe I couldn't have played without it. I doubt it, but I enjoyed it a lot. I chewed every day, every game.
Mr. Watt, there's a lot of people in the chat.
Eddie,
Pardon me?
Will you call me Eddie?
You know, we've had this discussion. I'll catch hell from my parents. You know that.
Yeah, I have one of the finest son-in-laws that you could ever have. I've known him 30 years probably, and he calls me Mr. Watt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still does.
So don't ask me to compromise my own values, okay?
Okay, I won't.
There's a lot of people in the chat tonight that wanted to thank you for signing their autographs when they sent it to you in the mail. So I just wanted to mention that, and Dan being one of them.
Yes, you signed this in, I believe, 2018, and wanted to thank you for that 1970 card.
Well, you are.
There was a question in the chat. What's the craziest thing you were ever asked to
I
sign?
was just getting ready to ask that.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
The crazy.
Was there anything out of the ordinary?
Do we need to have the grandkids step out of the room first?
No. We're fine. My youngest grandkid is a freshman in college now. So
No.
let's see. I can't think of anything. I mean, I have signed stupid. I mean, people that just tear a piece of paper out of a newspaper, a hunk off a corner of a newspaper near, and sign this. And you know very well that it's not going to make it out the door. But no, I don't really remember signing anything.
Okay.
I refuse to sign shirts and stuff on people. I don't think that's necessary, unless it's a good-looking girl, and then we'd have to.
We have a friend of all of ours who's asking if you have any good Boog Powell stories.
Boog Powell. Well, let's see. I'll start a story, and then I'm sure I'll think of another one. Boog was notorious for holding out. And it worked out real well for him. He lived in Kendall, which is just south of Miami. And he would hold out because he hated spring training more than anything. He would hold out. And this is the year that I thought I deserved more than what the Orioles were paying. The Orioles were notoriously frugal.
Mm-hmm.
No, they were notoriously frugal, very much so. So I was holding out, and Boog says, "Why don't you just come down come down and live with me for a week or so. And I said, well, okay. He had a nice house down in Kendall. So I'd go down, we'd go to sleep, we'd get up, eat breakfast. And then there was what was it, South Dade Community College or something down there. And we'd go down to the field and I would throw. Of course, I threw a little bit at home before I came down, but I'd throw batting practice to him, and he'd hit, and we'd both do a little bit of running and stuff. But we did that 2 or 3 years. But I don't think I can't think of anything the second some kind of a wild story. Boog was a big, fun-loving, happy-go-lucky guy. Loved to fish. He owned a marina out on Key West for a long time, and then he sold it. But we went fishing on a couple of times, and he notoriously, as some of us, would love to go fishing and drink beer, or just we'd go to a place afterwards, after a ball game, and stay till it closed, and just drank beer and talked and had a good time. But he never did anything really wild, besides just a little bit of having fun.
Dom's got a question here. Staven Sports Cards. Any behind-the-scenes information you can give us on kangaroo courts? Did the Orioles have those when you were playing a kangaroo court?
Oh yeah, they only had it the 1 year.
Oh,
I believe. I don't know if we had it after the '66 season or not. Frank came over from Cincinnati, and because he came from Cincinnati, I made the big league club because they traded Milt Pappas and Daryl Knowles and Jack Balcham. They traded off 3 or 4 of their pitchers, so they needed 3 or 4 bodies to fill in. And I happen to have had 2 pretty good minor league seasons. So they kept,
looking at the numbers, 14-1 for Aberdeen.
yeah,
That's it.
should have been 16-0. That was I had an exceptional year. And anyhow, we got to the big leagues at the same time, and I don't remember exactly what the start was, but we had a club that was a Hank Bauer club, no nonsense. And that wasn't it, but it was probably part of it, because you'd get fined $1 for fraternizing with some. If you went over to talk to somebody on the other club, or before practice, before batting practice, or when you were running in the outs or something, if you talked to a member of the other club, they'd bring you up to the kangaroo court. And of course, I think we won 113 games that year or something. We won a ton of games. And as soon as we'd come in, I never had a beer until I was 25, but I learned how to drink that first year. And we'd come in after a ball game, grab a beer, and Frank would put a mop on his head. So it had like the old English barristers did. Okay. And then he'd get a bat and use it as a gavel, and we'd have, votes. It's okay. Somebody was talking. Somebody did something else, and now, guilty. Yeah, whack, and then you're, you automatic $1. But then we passed out the stupid base running award of the night, the weak swing award of the night, the poorest fielding play of the night, base running. So yeah, okay, just different phases of the game. We had an award for that every night, and it got to be well known around the league, and it was I think other people tried it later on. I don't know if I know it helped make us successful because we'd win ball games just so we could go have a court.
Someone is asking about Mike Schmidt. You played in '74, I guess, was it, with Philadelphia? And Mike Schmidt was his first full year.
Yes.
Anything about Schmidt that you remember? Did you think he was going to be the great player that he ended up being?
Well, he'd been there the year. I think he led the league in home runs the year before. Now I might be wrong. Somebody that's got some knowledge or a book, you can find out. But I think he was there the year before, and I think he hit some home runs, and I think he was suggested to hit home runs. He was an excellent low ball hitter, and you could tell right away that he was going to be a full-fledged star. I mean, he was already and was going to get a lot better. He turned into a pretty good fielder, but not Brooks Robinson. But he turned into a player, and you could tell that he was a good athlete. The Phillies had a basketball team that played in the winter, and he played on it, and you could tell that he was from Miami of Ohio or Ohio University or someplace, that he was going to be a good player, and of course turned out to be a very good player, very good hitter, good all around player.
I want to ask you. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say Schmidt led the league in home runs in '74. 36 home runs, led the National League.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he had hit some the year before. Now I don't know.
18 it says. Yep.
Okay, all right.
John?
I wanted to ask. I grew up a fan of the Lumber Company with the Pirates. In '74, in that era, who was the toughest out for the Pirates then?
I would think it would had to be Willie Stargell. Clemente was a truly great player. They had other people.
What about Al Oliver?
Oliver was good. He was good. He was a good player. Oliver didn't scare me though. Willie did. Willie was he's one of my very, very favorite people.
Is that right?
We played. Let's see. We played. Well, he and I and Merv Rettenmund and Mudcat Grant went to Vietnam in '70 on a USO tour, and Willie and I spent a lot of time together, and he was really a tremendous person. And then we faced him in the series the next year, and I remember he and I became good friends, and we were talking, and he said, "If you don't know anybody, never saw him hit, where would you pitch him?" And I said, "Well, I'd go to my strength, period." And he'd say, "Well, okay." He said, "What I would do if I was a pitcher," he says, "I would throw the ball right under his hands where he holds the bat, wherever it is." Because, Willie had all this when he went around and around. Well, so I'm facing him, and I don't think it was in in that series, but maybe later on when I was with the Phillies later on, and the first time I faced him, he always had the bat here, and I cranked up and I threw one just exactly where I want to, and it hit him right on the thigh, the front of his thigh, and he was walking to first base, and he was laughing, I was laughing. I said, "You told me to throw it right under your hands." And he said, okay. But he was, and then we worked together for 4 or 5 years with the Braves. After he stopped playing, he went back to the Braves, and I ended up my last 12 years with the Braves, 13 years with the Braves. So. But he was a super guy, and he could play, he could hit.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a real student of the game. I saw he did something with, I think it was George Plimpton. What's his name? George Plimpton?
Plimpton, the writer?
Yeah, the writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did something, and it was pretty long, and Willie Stargell was really cerebral, and he went through his whole theory of hitting and everything. So the fact that he told you that makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't know, but could have, yeah.
I have a question about Davey Johnson.
Yeah.
You played with Davey for, I don't know, 7, 8 years, maybe even longer than that.
Yeah.
Did you think that he was going to be like the manager that he became?
No.
World champion manager?
No.
No?
No. When I went to instructional league the first time in 1962, my two roommates down there were Mark Belanger and Davey Johnson. Now, Mark was right out of high school. I'd had, I think, 2.5, 3 years of college, and Davey had 2.5, 3 years of college. And Davey had a lot of weird ideas. And he didn't like his nickname with the Orioles, but he had to accept it. His nickname was Dum Dum. He wasn't real fond of it, but he could never argue with it. And when he left Baltimore and went to Atlanta,
right,
and hit 44 home runs or something his first year down there.
Yep.
I thought the Gamblers had got to the whole National League, because he never hit over a dozen, I think, with us, maybe 15 at the most. And then when he became a manager, I was amazed. And then he managed the United States team in the World Baseball Congress deal. I was surprised.
Huh. Okay.
And he's one of the few. He's one of the few of us that are still alive off the '66 club, and
yeah,
I think there's only 9 or 10 of us left now. So,
someone wanted to know if you faced Roberto Clemente in the '71 series.
I faced him, I know, once, and he hit a ball in the hole and beat it out for a base hit. And it was in, I suppose about the 7th inning, because I never got in a ball game before the 7th inning. And an 8th inning it might have been. And then he ended up coming around, and Milt May, the backup catcher, got a base hit off of me later on and won that ball game. And you missed your best trivia question of the night.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
Why don't you do that question? That's a good one.
when was the first night game ever played in the World Series? I can't give you the exact date, but it was the third game. No, it was the
Game 4.
fourth game of the Baltimore-Pittsburgh World Series in '71. That was the first night game.
Mm-hmm.
We won two in Baltimore. Pittsburgh beat us the first day there. Then they beat us at night in a wild ball game that I ended up being the losing pitcher. So that's my claim to fame trivia.
My dad told me that Earl Weaver was talking smack on Clemente in that series. And Clemente hit a home run to right field, and Earl Weaver said something about, I don't know, he didn't have the power or something. So then he smacked one over center field. I don't know if that's all true.
I don't know. I didn't hear anything about that.
Okay.
Clemente would be a difficult man to criticize. And I talked to a couple people with Pittsburgh who said that he was a hypochondriac and took a lot of pills and did a lot of things and everything like that. But he was a tremendous player on the field, offensively, defensively, and he was a humanitarian and did a lot of things for the Puerto Rican people, including, of course, his famous last Mercy flight that didn't get more than 300 or 400 yards off the ground in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I always heard that hypochondriac talk, but so he was in a bad accident when he was young, and I know that plagued him his whole life, and I think that's why he had a lot of pain and ailments, and that's something nobody ever talks about.
No,
I believe it was a car accident.
I've never heard it before.
Somebody in the chat was asking about your home runs that you hit, and I know you had a great story for the one off of Sam McDowell.
Yeah. McDowell had the best 4 pitches to come out of one arm of anybody in the American League at that time. Best fastball, curveball, slider, change combination. And he had it all going one night in Baltimore. And I can't remember. I came into the ball game and pitched the 7th inning and the 8th inning. And then I was due to come up in the bottom of the 8th. And I think this had to be 68 because Hank Bauer was managing, and I hit 2 home runs the year before off of a couple of guys, and then one I got off the mound and went over and sat down and get ready to get my jacket and go back in the clubhouse. Bauer says, he says, just get a bat and go up and hit. He says, hell, you can hit as good as any of these guys over here. So I said, okay. And I could hit at that time. I was a decent hitter. And so I got my bat and went up to home plate. And I'd struck McDowell out the half inning before. And he thought he was a good hitter. Well, he was horrible. But I struck him out and it didn't set well with him. So I get up there and get a bat and get it on my shoulder. McDowell winds up and turned the fastball loose right in the middle of the plate, and all I could do was flinch. Strike 1. Strike 2 is the same way. Cranked up to a fastball right down, and I couldn't get the bat started quick enough. So it was 0-2, and he cranks up again. Now he throws me a slider that's about 95 miles an hour. And he made a mistake. He threw it right where the bat was. And as soon as I hit it, I knew it was gone. I mean, it went clear up about 2/3 of the way up to the seats in left field there in Baltimore. And I went around the bases, walked by, and Bauer just looked at me and said, "Told you." Told you. But
Sam
that
McDowell threw hard, didn't he?
McDowell? Yeah,
McDowell.
he threw hard. He had good stuff. If I was left-handed, he would have scared me. I mean, and I could hit. I mean, I hit over 300 in my first year.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Well, I was in the bullpen. I got up I started the second half of the year, so I ended up getting up, I think 40 sometimes. And I hit 304, 2 home runs, and I think I drove in 22 runs and 44 at bats. So
That's great.
I know I hit well. I was a good hitter. Then I got smacked in the face, and then I think I got one more hit the rest of my career. But I haven't.
Did you ever throw at anybody because they hit a home run off you or anything like that?
I threw at people, yes, but never because they hit a home run off me. If they deserved to be thrown at, and they knew it, I threw at them. And nobody ever charged the mound because they knew if I threw at them, they deserved to be thrown at, and they were expecting. Guys, well, I didn't give up many home runs and that kind of stuff. But I threw it one guy, horrible hitter, Ruben Amaro.
Yeah.
Ruben Amaro was with the Yankees in
68 or something.
This was 68. I was going to say 68.
Yeah.
And he went, I think he went 9 for 10 off of me. and he hit 198. And he went 9 for 10 off me. And of course, I wouldn't throw at him. But
yeah, but then you had, what about, you had a good record against Mantle, didn't you?
I had good luck getting Mickey Mantle out. Yeah. Never threw at him. Never had a reason to. I didn't know anything about it.
He never got a hit off of you, did he?
No, I didn't know that. A friend of mine loves to get on the internet, and he looks up all kinds of little weird stuff. And he came around, and he's one of the few guys in town that knew I played baseball. And we were at the golf course, and he said, Mantle ever hit a home run off you? I said, I don't think so. I said, I would have remembered it. I don't think so. Well, did he ever get a hit off you? And I said, I don't know. I don't remember any, but I'm not saying he didn't. And then Dwayne said, well, Mantle was 0 for 13 off of you, and you struck him out either 5 or 7 times, and he never got a base hit off of you.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I know he never hit me very well, but I didn't know how many or how not many. So,
well, we're right on. We're right up against the time you promised us. So
yeah. I do want to say, John, real quick. So Mr. Watt was gracious with his time tonight. I want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you to your daughters, Tammy and Tina, who helped arrange this evening. And if anybody's interested in my first round of interviews with Mr. Watt, they can go to my channel. Episode 31, 32, 33, and 34 is just full of great stories, including my favorite, which was the rosin bag that you threw for a strike during a game. So. But John, thank you for allowing us to come to your channel, and Dan, thank you so much as well. So
yes, thank you, Mr. Watt, for coming on. Seriously, this was wonderful, so wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. This was an absolute joy.
It was a pleasure
Great experience.
being here, and thank God for 2 children. Or I got all 3. My son could have set this up too. No way I would have. So I thank you for them. So
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
And thank you to everybody in the chat as well.
Yes, the chat was great tonight.
thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay. Bye,
See ya.
everyone. Thanks for joining.
Safe travels.